I'm Dan Mangrew with your Newsmax TV Money Report. Today we have a special interview with the creator of the Rogers International Commodities Index. He's considered by many to be one of the best investors of the last 100 years. He co-founded the Quantum Fund with George Soros that produced a 4,200% gain during the 1970s. Joining us today on Newsmax TV is Jim Rogers. Jim, it's good to have you back on the show.
I am delighted to be here. I'm a fan.
Robert Fisk recently broke the story that Arabs were conspiring with China, Russia, Japan, and France to end dollar dealings for oil and overthrow the dollar. Big oil states have denied those reports. What's your assessment, and who do you believe?
Well, we do know that the dollar is a terribly flawed currency. I mean, everybody in the world knows that, including the head of the World Bank, who recently pointed this out, even though he's an American citizen. The rest of the world is trying to figure out what to do about the U.S. dollar, including, I hope, Washington. And they're all looking for other ways to trade. Whether this story has any legitimacy or not, I have no idea. I don't think it does. It just didn't have the sound or the ring of a real story. But somebody is worried, and people have been worried. I mean, whether it's Brazil or France or England or America, I mean, everybody knows there's a problem, and something has to be done.
Do you believe that the dollar could ultimately be replaced as the world's reserve currency?
Oh, I'm sure it will be. I mean, the same thing that happened to the pound sterling 60 or 70 or 80 years ago is happening to the dollar. We're the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. Our debts are going through the roof. I mean, I don't particularly like saying these things, but these are facts which we have to deal with. If we ignore them, we're going to suffer even more. The pound sterling lost its status as the world's reserve currency. I'm afraid the same thing is happening to the U.S. dollar now. Our enemies certainly are trying to figure out a way to use this weakness against us, and many of our friends are starting to worry too, saying, what are we going to do? We got to do something.
So do you see, let's say, gold as eventually replacing the dollar, or do you see a solution where a basket of currencies is designed to replace the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency?
If the world got really desperate tomorrow, it might try for gold. The situation with gold has never worked for long periods of time as the world's currency. I mean, people have used gold in many ways for hundreds of years, thousands of years, but it has never been very successful as an international currency like the dollar or something like that. What will replace the dollar? I don't know. If the world ended tomorrow, it would have to be gold, or maybe the euro. The euro has its own problems. If it happens in 15 or 20 years, it might be the renminbi, the Chinese currency, but that's absurd to even think about right now. The only thing I can see that if the world desperately needed something would be the euro or gold, or maybe a basket of currencies, or even a basket of commodities.
Now, recently on CNBC, you stated that the U.S. dollar could fall into a state of hyperinflation. Is that now even more relevant, and how high could it go?
Well, what I think I said was that we are having inflation. We're going to have worse inflation. It's certainly going to be as bad as it has been in previous periods of American history. Whether it gets to hyperinflation, I don't know. Well, I guess I did say it could become hyperinflation. Ask me after we get to, worse inflation first. If we continue on the road we're going, of course, we're going to have very, very serious inflation. The U.S. government has taken on gigantic amounts of debt, more debt than it's taken on in the whole history of the Republic or than any other nation has ever done. They're printing gigantic amounts of money. This has always led to inflation. Maybe it's different this time, but it never has been different in the past.
Are we looking at potential maybe, let's say in 5 years, 15, 20% inflation?
We certainly could have that kind of inflation. We probably will. We know that the government lies to us about inflation. They say there is no inflation, but people write me all the time saying, where does the government shop? Our prices are going up. I'm sure you know that prices are going higher. The government keeps saying they're not. Now, granted, energy prices are down, but nothing else is, nothing I know of. So we have inflation now, and I'm afraid it's going to get worse.
Now you bring up energy prices, and we've seen oil down 50% off its year high. Where do you see oil going, and are you still a big bull on commodities?
I am optimistic about the future of commodities, the prices. Oil over the next, during this bull market, over the next 10 years is going to go much, much higher. The surprise is going to be how high the price of oil stays and how high it goes. I mean, the world it's pretty clear that we've had no major discoveries in over 40 years. The reserves all over the world are declining at a fairly serious rate. So unless something happens, the price of oil will certainly go back to 100, 150. Who knows how high it's going to go during the course of this bull market, which still has years to go.
And now one of the commodities that has gone up very high as of recently is gold, and hitting new highs, well over 1,000. How high do you see gold going within the next year?
Well, I'm not smart enough to tell you in the next year. I'm sure there are plenty of people that you can interview who can tell you that. I do own gold. I expect it to go much higher during the course of the bull market. The old high, if you adjust for inflation, would be over $2,000 an ounce. I'm sure it will get over $2,000 during the course of the bull market, and perhaps even much higher than that. I mean, the world, for better or for worse, sometimes looks at gold as a way to hedge against weak currencies and against inflation. And of course, many gold mines are in decline. The reserves are declining around the world. So there are lots of things going for gold. I own it. I think I'll make more in other things, but I'm certainly not selling my gold.
Now, aside from gold, what other commodities are you buying these days?
Well, the main thing that I would buy these days would be agricultural commodities. I own them. They're still depressed. I mean, gold's at an all-time high, as you point out, but many commodities are far, far, far below, or agricultural commodities are far below their all-time high. I mean, even silver is 70 or 75% below its all-time high. So I'd rather be looking at areas where things are still very depressed on a historic basis. Will I buy them? I don't know, but I think usually they're better opportunities if you look at depressed areas rather than popular areas.
Now, new unemployment numbers came in at 9.8%, with broad unemployment at around 16%. But with the stock market up 50% off its lows, are we looking at a jobless recovery?
Well, so far we certainly had a stock market jobless recovery. The economy is a lot better at the moment than it was, say, last year at this time. No question about that. But remember, last year at this time, people stopped buying everything. They didn't buy beans, they didn't buy rice, they didn't buy soap. Well, after a while, you have to buy some more soap, you have to buy some more rice because you run out. That's been happening this year, plus governments have been spending huge amounts of money. So of course this year is better than last, and even part of next year will be better than last year was.
Well, recently the Obama administration, they've made plans to rein in executive compensation and create a new Consumer Financial Protection Agency. Your thoughts on these?
Well, as you know, most of the time and throughout history when the government has come up with new things, it's always had unintended consequences and things get worse. They cause more problems than they cure. I'm sure these problems will lead to even worse problems by the cure. In other words, the agencies that the government will come up with in the end will be just as corroded and corrupt as everything else in Washington, and we'll regret them.
And also, with 80 million baby boomers scheduled to retire within the next 10 years, Social Security has already started to run in the red with an estimated loss projected for $10 billion in 2010. Do you think that Social Security could end up bankrupting America?
Well, Medicaid and Medicare will probably bankrupt America first, and then the third wave of bankruptcy will probably come from Social Security. There's no question the numbers are terrifying. Anybody who sits down and looks at the numbers know that the system is bankrupt. Maybe it's not bankrupt at the moment, and we're all going to collect our Social Security checks and our Medicare and Medicaid checks, but the money is coming from out of thin air, and that cannot go on forever.
Jim Rogers, author, economist, and founder of the Rogers International Commodities Index. Jim, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Always my pleasure. Anytime.
Signing off, I'm Dan Mangrew for Newsmax TV Money.
Sarah Palin's new book, Going Rogue in American Life, will be released on November 17th. You can be among the first to get your copy. Check out our incredible free offer for Sarah's new book. Just go to Newsmax.com and click on the top banner for this great offer. Act today.